And today I would like to remind all of us that it's day 613 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And I would like to start our day with thanking our security and defense forces. Well, let's start our day with an interesting event. We will be talking about the program aimed at training the trainers who are supposed to study the representatives of their communities to jointly address crisis situations arising in the communities. So we will be talking about these trainings, who was trained, what was the goal, and what are the first results. I would like to introduce our speakers today. Joining us in the studio are Dmytro Teperyk, Resilient Ukraine Program Director. Also joining us is Yana Boyko, head of the School of Mediapatriots NGO, and Ivan Vartovnyk, the Resilient Ukraine Program Coordinator, the Train the Trainers Project Expert. Good morning, dear friends. Mr. Dmytro, I would like to start our conversation with the trainings. What was their goals, for whom they were held, and what was actually taught during those trainings? Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here in Ukraine. I'm Dmytro Teperyk. I'm from Estonia.
And the program of Resilient Ukraine, Стійка Україна, has been working in Ukraine since 2016, which means that we are operating here already for 8 years. But the program was planned for different stages, and thanks to our partners, we started a new phase of the program this autumn. And the program, of course, has been evolving, which means we also were adapting to the challenges and to the changes and to the difficulties and the realities, including, of course, the war. And my country, Estonia, and your country, Ukraine, of course, have a lot of similarities in security threats. And of course, my country supports Ukraine as much as possible and will be doing so. But to go beyond the words, to have some practical aspects, our philosophy remains the same, that resilience, stійкість, resilience is a very practical concept of mitigating the risks of threat perceptions, but also how to manage civil security solutions on regional and local levels. And I think the most important is also our perceptions of the future, basically credo for the better future, how Ukraine and friends of Ukraine in Europe could support transformation, because resilience also means not just recovery but transformation. And the big challenge of the war, and war of course is one of the major crises we can see, and resilience of course look at the crisis through the prism of security. So the challenges of the war include that you still have your old vulnerabilities, but then new vulnerabilities emerge through the crisis. And then we have multiple crises, multi-staged, multi-layered crisis, which means that no single agency, no single governmental body is capable of addressing all the risks and all the consequences, because just they are not designed for that. You have a lot of different risks and consequences, which means that you need basically a interdisciplinary and cross-sectoral approach to involve not just state actors, but all resilient stakeholders, as we do in my country, in Estonia, and other countries. Of course, there are volunteers. Of course, there are many actors in civil society, in private businesses, in media community, of course, in expert community of academia. But how to synchronize the work among them? That's the big challenge, not just for Ukraine, for every country. But as Ukraine is a country at war, which means that this challenge is even bigger. There is a great potential. We have studied characteristics of resilience in Ukraine, as I mentioned, since 2016. And we have been exercising these sets of skills, sets of practical knowledges, and sets of attitudes, how to survive the war, the crisis, which skills you need, which attitudes you need. But it's not enough. What we are also trying to exercise in our format, and my colleagues will be speaking about the format later, we're also trying to exercise the projections of transformation, because this is a unique moment when Ukrainian society as a whole, not just the government, but the whole Ukrainian society, my request actually, and maybe even demand from all resilience actors, the transformation, so not just to recover from the war, but to become a better society, a more transparent, a more innovative, a more resilient. And again, it's not just kind of declarative words, there are sets of practical skills and attitudes. And for that reason, we started a new phase of the program, Resilient Ukraine, to support those agents of resilience, агенти стійкості, and agents of changes on regional and local levels. So they are not kind of typical trainings, but they are multi-sectoral crisis simulation exercises. Дуже дякую.
Дякую. Пані Яно, тож давайте більш детально поговоримо про інструменти, за допомогою яких...
Well, Ms. Yana, so let's talk about the instruments using which those trainings were implemented. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Ukrinform for this opportunity to tell you more today here about the trainings, and to Resilient Ukraine for this wonderful cooperation. The Trainers is an experimental project aimed at training in cross-sectoral, multidisciplinary crisis exercise. Previously, Resilient Ukraine was more involved in simulation of crisis situations, and now the accent shifted mostly to facilitating expertise training of the experts, to make sure that people in their communities can share that knowledge and make their own projects using those skills that we train them in. Generally, our civil organization, the School of Mediapatriots, is focused on development of civil, national, and civic position, on creation on more and more initiatives, and every day we see they're growing in number. We see new trainings, lectures every day, and that's a pressing issue we have to solve, because it's not sufficient for the society. The society wants to learn, they understand that what's happening now is the new challenges every day. And we were visited by Miss Ambassador of the Estonian Republic, who said that democratic countries will have to learn this resilience from Ukraine. They will need to take this experience, and the fact that so little number of countries exist in this very protracted fight with their eternal enemies. We are attempted to be eradicated, to be made smaller, but we need to build this resilience, we need to build this understanding of the fact that we are stronger because it's being discussed abroad, but we forget about it here in Ukraine sometimes. And our organization, School of Mediapatriots, focuses their own activity or their key activity on building this understanding, on building communications between sectors of the society. We work a lot with the youth because it's important to work with people on a local level so they can develop their own projects, because they need to move further on in some direction. The training for the sake of training is not just enough. This is why, using this experimental project, we took this important decision about the people who were undergoing the training, that they would be able to address us for help, for support, and we will be providing such support to them. A little bit more about the activities of this civil organization, and that we need to, well, we have challenges that we have to work with, and resilience covers a major fraction of those challenges that we will be facing. We will have to fight against Russian narratives. We will have to renew the authentic culture. We will have to deal with cybersecurity issues. We will have to deal with the language issue, and those are all challenges that we're facing now already, and they will be even more pressing after the occupation of our territory. Those will be different contexts, and we will have to bring people back to our context and to ruin everything that Russia tries to impose on them now. So in this project Resilient Ukraine, we were mentioning it frequently, that we have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead. We have to predict the crisis and to be prepared for it, to be able to solve it. Also, I would like to mention that our project was implemented with the support of the Embassy of Estonia in Ukraine, and we appreciate it a lot. That was a wonderful and useful experience. We've heard about it many times from our participants of the training, and we want to extend our appreciation to Resilient Ukraine. Mr. Ivan, many say that during the full-scale invasion, many people evaluate the effect of decentralization. Many say that the communities were more or less ready to the challenges and to their solutions on a local level. Now you're saying that this program is aimed at the communities to build their resilience. So in your opinion, what did not work in that case, and what will this training give to the communities? I think we're talking here more about crisis management and how it will influence the coordination of all of the actors within the community. Yes, thank you very much. I agree that decentralization was one of the most successful reforms, and as Dmytro mentioned, the project was aimed at regional and local level, because they know better what are their vulnerabilities and where they have a space to grow and what are their strong sides. And this format of trainings, I want to say that it's in a good sense an experiment, because it's not only Estonian and Ukrainian experts who share their experience, but they also learn from the participants. From the trainees, they have feedback on what can be improved. They have advanced experience on solving crisis situations or how to better address different problems. Okay, just for an example, so that people who watch and listen to us can understand it better. Like, what is the situation, for example, being simulated? Well, the simulations are implemented on the basis of crisis scenario. It's artificial because we cannot recreate all the conditions, but we create a comfortable environment for the participants so they can solve the crisis. The crisis is multi-vector. So the scenario was a projectile, a missile incoming in the humanitarian headquarters, where there was a lot of humanitarian aid, which disappeared. Then there are refugees coming to that place, and an issue arises on coordination and interaction of internally displaced persons with the locals. Then there are messages from some hostile country. So again, this is a multi-layer, multi-level crisis, which involves some things that are of crisis nature, but at the same time some of them can be prevented. Just like in real life, the problem is not single, and the participants are trying to learn that they would not be able to solve that crisis all alone. They have to communicate, they have to interact, and their main goal is to solve, for example, the problem with the destruction of a humanitarian headquarters with a missile strike, but everybody learns how to mitigate the inflicted damage and the risks that can result from this situation. Well, talking about the participants who were involved, what are the government agencies, organizations who were taking part? We understand there's a lot of actors in such situation, from regional municipal administrations, law enforcement, emergency service. So what are the algorithms? I can tell you more about the formats that were implemented during this event that were going on from Friday to Sunday, and Yana can tell you in more detail about this specific event. Yes, we had participants from two regions, Dnipro region and Odessa region. There were 16 of them in total, 9 from Dnipro and 7 from Odessa region, and there were 5 representatives of civil organizations, 4 from the education sector, thank you, 1 representative of emergency service, 1 representative of police, and there were 5 more participants from the local government. So they were the main audience of our training. So talking about further steps, what are your plans? What are the regions you want to hold your training in? Well, our priority and our plans is to have this training implemented in Zhytomyr region, maybe Lutsk, Rivne, Ternopil, and in a long-term perspective, we would like to have such trainings in Autonomous Republic of Crimea. Thank you very much, Mr. Dmytro. I would like to ask you yet another question. I'm curious about the experience of Estonia. Do those procedures and algorithms work in Estonia, and now you're sharing them with Ukraine? Thank you for your question. Just in brief, no.
Well, so my country is learning too. I mean, my country is really trying to catch Ukrainian experience and to adapt it into our own civil security system. Well, we have some practices of resilience at local and regional level, but again, my country is much smaller, and the challenge for us is to understand again what kind of communities, what kind of groups of interest, what kind of громада, спільноти, how they cooperate between each other during a big crisis. So we have something tested already during the COVID, and that I think was also a challenge for us, how to mitigate the crisis risks and how to address the consequences. And again, I would like to stress out that very often, also in Estonia, we are thinking mostly retrospectively, trying to analyze kind of lessons learned from the previous crisis. But the trouble is that the next one will be different. And then we don't address enough the consequences of the crisis. We are kind of solving or fixing the problems of today. Maybe we think something about the tomorrow, but they might be long-term consequences. And then people are just thinking that it's enough to fix something for today and for tomorrow, and not thinking about the long-term consequences. And then the next crisis, which will be different, arrives. And then we have unfixed or unreflected consequences of the previous crisis, overlapping with the challenges of the new crisis. And that's the reason why, again, the structures we designed, and also in Estonia, if they are trying to solve it separately or alone, most probably, and we also learned that they are failing. I mean, it's not possible. Only kind of whole society approach and actually realistic picture how many resources you have, and by resources I mean not just money but also foremost people, because the out of the box innovative ideas they come from the mindset of people, not not from your bank account or not from some kind of techniques you have. So we are now in the process of rethinking our civil security approach and civil security structures in Estonia, also taking into account the lessons and experiences from Ukraine. And I would like to stress out experiences in plural, because Ukraine has now a lot of different experiences. Some of them are traumas, obviously, traumas of war. Some experiences in other regions, they are mostly related to internally displaced persons and humanitarian aid. Some of the experiences are more related to the casualties of war and some catastrophes near the front line. And many others, as Ivan suggested, that there is multi-vectoral crisis of different challenges, information, cyber, but also social-psychological, because we are now in the phase of rejecting, social-psychologically rejecting the war fatigue. And this is a big challenge, of course, in Ukraine, but also in my country, in Europe, that we should remain strong and not be tired of resisting. And that is something, again, a long-term consequence of the prolonged war. Дякую.
Дякую вам. Шановні колеги, якщо маєте питання, прошу долучатися до...
Thank you, dear colleagues. If you have any questions, please get involved in our conversation. Good morning, Svetlana Tkachuk, Ukrinform. I have two questions. First is, when is the next training and how to get involved? And second question, you're saying that you want to hold trainings in a number of regions in Ukraine. So the further it is from the front line, how will those crisis situations change the further you are from their front line? For example, if you have a training held in Lutsk, will they be adapted to the region? The trainings, I mean. So I will tell you about your second question. As I mentioned, the simulation is based on a scenario. Scenario consists of a number of events which are approximated to the realities that are existing in Ukraine. So this scenario is adaptive. Some of the events and conditions may be changed, and they should be changed because regional and local context in the rear and in the front lines is different, but some challenges are the same. For example, some misinformation things, as Dmytro mentioned, psychological condition, the condition of the population. So some things may remain the same because they fit into all Ukrainian concept, but it's clear that more military threats, more incoming projectiles, that's something inherent in the front lines or areas adjacent to the front lines. So this scenario is adaptive, and if anything is not contemplated by the scenario, but the participants want to get some information, there is some creative things arising, something can be figured out on the go. Some teams, they may generate this narrative on the go, so the trainers themselves, they are based on they are participant driven, if we say it in English. So the participants, they define the pace of the development of the situation. There is a framework, there is a person who acts as a moderator, but there is a lot of space for the participants to move, and they identify what their actions are. If they take, say, one decision, the event involves in one way. If they don't take that decision, it develops otherwise, and it's not like one event. The participants have to take those decisions quickly. They have to delegate responsibilities. So yes, again, the scenario is adaptive, and it's of training nature to us. We see what can be improved after we get this feedback from the participants. For example, one thing worked perfectly. It was very in accord with our realities, and then there may be another challenge that we face, and we develop different ways of solutions. So they take the instrument and adapt it to their level. As Yana mentioned, there will be attempts to synchronize the format of the training and training for the trainings. So basically those trainers whom we were training for 3 days, they will be first able to undergo this, so to say, on-the-job training, to see the simulation from the inside, to practically gain that experience and organize this format in their communities. And another question was about the future trainings and how to get involved. Yes, thank you. The next training, we don't yet have a date for sure. That will be somewhere in December, January. You can get all the information about the future trainings from the website of Resilient Ukraine, the web pages of Resilient Ukraine and Mediapatriots School. There will be all the instructions provided on how to get involved. Thank you very much for your initiative. I hope more and more organizations, both in government and civil sector, will get united and become more efficient in overcoming those challenges that unfortunately we are forced to overcome on a daily basis. I want to thank everybody for the interest in this topic. I'm reminding you, our next briefing is at 10 o'clock. We will have the presentation of analysis of evidences of those who were detained, the civilian hostages in the south of Ukraine. It will be provided by Media Initiative for Human Rights. Stay tuned and let's continue working together for our victory.